We'll give everybody till 6:05 to hop on.
Okay.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started, and others can hop on if they get a chance, but we're also going to be recording this so that folks can come back later. And I hope all you guys have recovered from our fun week of space camp this last week. But we have Lisa with us, who works in launch control for the NASA Artemis program as the lead safety console operator, and one of 2 people certified to launch Artemis I for safety. So I'm going to give the floor over to Lisa, and she's going to talk with us a little bit about the shuttle.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I've got a presentation ready, and I'm going to start with shuttle, and we'll get into the Artemis program as well. Just go ahead. If you have a question, just pipe up. I can't see if people have hands raised or the chat right now because I'm in presentation mode. So just interrupt me, or I can also answer questions at the end if anybody has any questions. So I am the safety console lead for the Artemis program here at Kennedy Space Center. I've been working at Kennedy Space Center for 23 years now, and I started pretty much right out of college on the shuttle program. So let me get started with the slides here. So first off, I have to put this disclaimer out here because I am presenting on my own and my opinions and comments are not necessarily representing the views of NASA. So anyway, that's just a little legal disclaimer when we present for folks. Okay, so the fun stuff. Who am I? So this is one of my favorite pictures. This was the night before we were going to launch Artemis for the first time, and that's me on console with my headset. And so where did I start? So I started dreaming of space when I was very young. I had space shuttles on my walls and posters. I had glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling. I went to space camp in Huntsville, Alabama. I was all in with space. And even in high school, I took honors in AP classes in science and math, and that was way before STEM existed. I'm not saying I'm old, but it was way before we had STEM. But that was really what I was interested in, and I knew that was the path I wanted to take. I wanted to be somehow in aviation, aeronautics. So I went ahead and got my bachelor's degree from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Arizona, and my master's degree in safety science and health management. And now I'm, like I said, working here at the Kennedy Space Center, and I have for like the last 23 years. So that's me in a nutshell. So my background has always been with my eyes towards the sky, looking at the moon and beyond. And I've been really fortunate to be able to work in the industry for so long. So I started back in 2000, in October of 2000, on the Space Shuttle program. So all these pictures are either pictures I've taken or ones right off the web, but I supported 35 Space Shuttle missions in safety. I started on pad safety, launch pad safety, working out on the launch pad, getting the vehicle ready for launch, and everything in between, which I'll get into in just a second. But these are some really cool pictures from start to finish. We roll the vehicle over in the horizontal position, and then we have to make it go vertical. That's a middle picture, and then we roll it out to the pad for launch. And in the picture on the left there, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but that is actually me right there, walking the vehicle over. And so that was pretty neat. As safety, we had to be with the folks here, making sure they were safe, and monitoring for safety, hypergolic fuels and gases, just making sure our personnel are safe. And that's truly what my job is. And I'm gonna get into that in just a second, but I like to share the cool pictures because that's the program is such fun, and there's just so many neat things to do out here. So really the nuts and bolts of what I do: safety, from shuttle rollout, launch to the launch pad, processing on the launch pad, and then landing. So I'm responsible for personnel safety, our people, our technicians who are processing the vehicle, making it ready for launch. We monitor for hazards during the processing of the vehicle. We monitor for oxygen, hypergolic fuels, and the hypergolic fuels are what make us be able to maneuver the rocket when we're up in space. It's very dangerous fuel and very hazardous, so we have all sorts of monitoring equipment, and our personnel wear all sorts of hazmat-like suits when they're working around it. We also have liquid hydrogen that fuels our tank on launch. Pyrotechnics, those are the explosives. In case, we're bolted down to the pad with explosives. So right on launch at T0 for launch, the explosives go off to help us get off the pad. And also we have explosives to remove our booster rockets from the tank. The booster rockets are these big white pieces on the side. So we have pyrotechnics that hold those in place. As you can imagine, the launch pad is very high off the ground. While we have guardrails and handrails, occasionally we have to work outside of those and work really high up. And we also work in what we call confined spaces, where you might have low oxygen or other hazards that we have to monitor for. So on launch day, it was pretty exciting. We closed the pad out. I worked that many a time. Red crew is when you have to go back out to the pad if there's a problem. After we've loaded the tank with all of our commodities and we're ready to go for launch, sometimes we have an issue where we have to go fix. And so we have to send a crew out, and that's pretty exciting. A little scary, but also really exciting, because you know that when you go out with your crew, you're potentially fixing the problem that will save our launch attempt for that day. ICE team, that's a picture here on the far right. That's actually me. If you can see, there's two people. I am the one on the left. It's hard to tell, but that was what's called ICE team. We were monitoring the tank for ice on launch day. The astronauts were getting seated in the orbiter, getting ready for launch, and we were out there monitoring the vehicle for ice. And then reentry ops is after we launch. We go back into the pad and make sure it's safe for our technicians to go back and start safing the pad from all of the commodities that we just used for launch. And of course, landing is really cool. That's on the runway. And in this picture, I am in the bottom right hand. That's me doing the aft assessment. We have aft, which is the back end, forward, which is the forward end. And we are the first ones to see the orbiter and the astronauts right when they've landed in space. So the shuttle program was pretty darn incredible. I was really fortunate to do some really incredible things with the program, just in safety alone. And I could say there's lots and lots of people that work to get the vehicle ready to go and launch and landing. But it's been a lot of fun working in the safety side, keeping our people safe every day. Here's some other cool pictures. These are all mine. From rollout, there's a picture of me on the pad. You can see the vehicle assembly building in the background, in front of the orbiter. Oops. Oh my gosh. This is me in the vehicle, in the orbiter. This is the flight deck on the right, the top right. And then one of my favorites is the bottom right picture with the vehicle, with the orbiter in the background. So just a few pictures from my time in shuttle. And then I moved to safety console, which is in the Launch Control Center. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that from Artemis, because I want to really get onto Artemis, because that's what's happening now. And that's the next generation. And I hope a lot of you might be a part of it. So we ended the Space Shuttle program in 2011 was our last launch. And we retired all of our orbiters to the museum. That's us, me and my coworkers standing under Discovery, getting her ready to go to a museum. That she's up in Washington, D.C. Shuttle Atlantis is here at the Kennedy Space Center, and Shuttle Endeavour is out in California. So we made history. I'm standing, you can't really see me, but I'm standing behind that banner. And we were all really, really proud of supporting our shuttle program to the end, and then retiring her to the museum so that everybody can go see her and get to see what we got to see every day. Then we got to begin Artemis, and that's what I'm really excited to talk about with you, because that, like I said, is our future. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Artemis program, and then specifically what we're doing here at Kennedy Space Center and getting us ready to go back to the moon. We went back with Artemis I just a few months ago, and we're going again with crew astronauts back to the moon in just a couple years. So it's really, really exciting times. So this is Artemis I launching off the pad in November of last year. So why do we want to go back to the moon, right? Well, we want to demonstrate our new technologies and capabilities, because next up, we're going to go explore Mars. So after the moon, it's on to Mars, which is just incredible. So we're going to study the moon and learn more about the origin of the history of our Earth, the moon, and our solar system. Of course, we want to establish American leadership on the moon. We want to broaden our commercial interests and partnerships internationally. A lot of international partners that make this happen. And we want to have a real international team going back to the moon. And most importantly, we want to inspire a new generation. We want to encourage careers in STEM, especially all of you. You guys are getting ready to go into high school, into college, and we sure would like you to be part of our team. So if you have any interest in being in the math, sciences, and engineering. So when are we going to the moon? Well, like I said, starting last year and throughout the rest of this decade, we're going to send science instruments and technology to demonstrate that we can do what we need to do on the lunar surfaces. Our commercial partners are going to help with that. Like, think about the SpaceX. If you've heard of SpaceX and Blue Origin, they are going to help us. They're our commercial partners. Prior to the lunar surface landing, we are going to fly 2 missions around the moon to test our systems. Artemis I, like I said, we launched last year. It was an uncrewed flight to test our vehicle, the rocket, and the Orion spacecraft together. And then next year, probably actually early part of 2025, is Artemis II. And that's going to be the first SLS and Orion flight with crew. the first time we've been back to the moon with humans since Apollo in the late 1960s, early 1970s. So it's been a very long time, and we're very excited that we're going back. And we're gonna start to develop our moon base, and then, like I said, jump off to as a point to get onto Mars. So what are we gonna do when we get there? Well, while Mars remains our goal, we first want to explore the surface of the moon with humans and robotics. We're gonna start by sending astronauts to the lunar South Pole, which is somewhere we haven't been. We didn't go there with Apollo. And we're gonna find and use water and other resources needed for long-term exploration, investigate the moon, learn more about the moon and our home planet, and learn how to live and operate on the surface of another celestial body, where we're actually 3 days from home. So imagine if something goes wrong, we're not very close to the Earth when we're on the moon. So we have to figure out how we can live there. Apollo missions were only on the moon for a very short period of time, not days. And so we're going to learn how to, and days and weeks and months, we're going to learn how to live on the moon. And then we're going to prove our technologies, and we'll send astronauts on missions to Mars. And missions to Mars can take up to 3 years. So you can see why we need to learn how to live on the moon first. So that is the overall goal of Artemis, and it's super, super exciting. We have lots of missions planned. Pretty soon we're going to get to where we're going to be launching about 1 mission a year through the 2030s, and then we'll start on to Mars. So what do we do here at Kennedy Space Center? Because I would love to share with you what I do at my work. This is the beginnings of Artemis. We had a lot of work to do to go between the Space Shuttle program and the Artemis program. Now, this is a picture I took out on the launch pad. This was just a few weeks before we launched last year, and you can see all the infrastructure, the towers. So we had to get all that ready for Artemis because it was all supporting the Space Shuttle, which was an entirely different vehicle and an entirely different infrastructure. So we had to upgrade our equipment, our mobile launcher, a vehicle assembly building, our crawler transporter, and our launch pad. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about all of those, and have some pretty cool pictures too, because like I said, I love cool pictures of what I do. So Mobile Launcher 1, this is the tower that you see here. The big gray steel structure is really, really tall. It's 355 foot tall, just the tower part. And then it's got a base. You can see the base has the flag on it in that picture. And there's a lot of compartments in there that have a lot of different things that support the Artemis rocket. So it's a really tall tower because Artemis is a really tall rocket. And you can see it's got a lot of arms that swing away that service the vehicle. I don't know if you can see my pointer, but see, we call these umbilicals, they attach. And that's how we get all of our fuel into the tank from the launch pad. They go up the launch pad and out these umbilicals. And right at 0, when we're counting down for launch, these all swing away. Oops, why do I keep doing that? Sorry, guys.
Hey, Lisa, there's a question.
Sure.
They want to know, do you know why a lot of the names of the missions are Greek names?
Well, so Artemis is the sister of Apollo. So that's how that came about. So we're trying to pay homage back to the Apollo days, and Artemis is this twin sister of Apollo. So that's how Artemis became the name of our program, since we're going back to the moon. Is that a good answer? Does that explain?
I think that's a great answer.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool. I thought that was a pretty cool name for our program. Yeah. So the launcher we had to build and in fact, we're building a second one right now. We're in the design, and it will be ready for Artemis III. So these take a long time to build because it's a lot of steel, a lot of structure to be built and put together. But it transports the vehicle from the vehicle assembly building out to the launch pad. You can see it in transit in these other pictures. It's going up the pad slope here on the top picture to sit up here on the top of the pad. That's where we launch from. So it transports our rocket out once it's built. So we build it in the vehicle assembly building where it's protected from the weather. We have a lot of platforms, which I'll get to in a second, where we can access the vehicle better than at the pad. There's not a lot of access points out at the pad. So we build it and then we roll it out. So that's the mobile launcher, and it's, like I said, really tall, and there's a lot of different moving parts on it, and that's what we launch from. So the vehicle assembly building, now that's a big building. So I know it's a pretty iconic building. You probably recognize it. It was used in Apollo to start. We used it in Space Shuttle, and we're using it again for Artemis. It's 526 feet tall, and it's 8 acres of area. It is a gigantic building, and it's got 4 different bays that we can build in. We are currently building in one of the bays, the one with these are doors, actually. Each one of these little holes is a door on the side of the building, with where the NASA meatball side is. And that faces the ocean, and we roll out of the building that way. So like I said, it's got a lot of platforms. You can see in some of these pictures that wrap around the vehicle. You can see solid rocket boosters. Those are the white like sticks that are on either side. You can see the platforms wrapped around them. And then the orange tank, that's our core stage. That's where all of our propellant for launch is it goes into those tanks. And so you can see the platforms wrapped around it. So we can actually service the vehicle by getting closer to the vehicle with these platforms. Now, we had to switch all of our platforms from shuttle platforms to Artemis platforms. And you can see this is a picture on the left-hand side, standing on the ground and looking straight up. It's an enormous building. At the very top is a yellow, you can see a yellow, like looks small, it's very large. It's a 325-ton crane. And the crane actually lifts pieces of rocket up and moves them into position. And you can see that going on in the picture on the right-hand side. That's actually stacking a solid rocket booster. They come to us in pieces because they're really big and long. And they come to us in pieces from Utah by train. They come on in rail cars on the train tracks. And they arrive here at Kennedy Space Center. And we have to inspect them and make sure they're ready to go. And then we start stacking them. One on top of each other, and we bolt them together basically and make them so that they're one big booster rocket, and there's one on either side. And you can see how that's done here. So it takes quite a bit of time to get our rocket ready to go. And once the solid rocket boosters are stacked and ready to go, then we put the orange tank in. And I have a picture of the orange tank down here. It's gigantic also. So that is our orange core stage on the right-hand side. And like I said, there's a big tank inside of the orange tank that's for hydrogen, liquid hydrogen, and another one for liquid oxygen. And those are how we propel our main engines when we go for launch. So we combine those 2 commodities together, and it gives us enough thrust to get off the ground and into orbit. So it's a lot of hydrogen, a lot of oxygen in there, liquid. It's also liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen are cryogenic. They're very, very cold, like negative 300 plus degrees. So we only do that part at the pad. We just build it in the vehicle assembly building. And then the other picture is a segment without the platforms wrapped around it. You can see there's the aft booster segment. That's the bottom part of it. And then we start building on top of it. So that's what happens in the vehicle assembly building. So we had to redo all of our platforms to support Artemis. It took many years. A lot of work to get the shuttle platforms out because they did not fit, because the shuttle is a totally different rocket. Although we use a lot of same parts and pieces, it's in a different configuration. So that was a lot of work. And then this is one of my favorites, the crawler transporter. And I say that because this was one of my projects in between shuttle and Artemis when we started really getting into launching again. I worked on the crawler transporter as the safety representative with the upgrades needed to make it be able to carry the Artemis rocket. It could not, as it stood, it couldn't support the weight of the Artemis rocket and the launcher. So we had to do a lot of upgrades to it. So what it does is it rolls with its big trucks and treads. It rolls underneath the launcher. It literally picks up the launcher with the rocket on top, and it rolls it out to the pad, and it takes about 8 hours. It's a really slow roll because, as you can imagine, it's carrying a very, very big, very hazardous and very expensive rocket on top, and we wouldn't want anything to happen to it. So it's a long, slow move. But we upgraded a lot of the crawler transporter so that it was able to support the Artemis program, and it was about 2 years of upgrades that we worked on to be able to work that. But you can see it rolling along here without anything on it in the right-hand picture. That's just what it looks like by itself. And then it's in the left-hand picture, it's actually dropped the rocket off on the pad and it's come back down the slope. So, and we actually have a really neat hydraulic system in it So as it moves up, this is actually a little bit of a hill on the launch pad. And as it moves up the slope, it keeps the rocket steady and straight up and down. So as it goes up the slope, it has hydraulics that go up. So the rocket is always level and never tipping. Very important. So there's some pictures of me while I was working the project. You can see how big the truck, that's a truck. It's me with the green hard hat on. You can see how big and immense the crawler transporter is. It's a really cool piece of equipment, and it does a really good job for us. And it was used in Apollo. So you can see a lot of our infrastructure we've reused. We've just modified it to support the Artemis program. So then the launch pad, well, that's where all the fire happens, right? That's where we launch from. We did a lot of tests out there. There's the launcher rolling back out. We had to make sure that everything fit properly. The picture on the top is water flows. Those are, we send millions of gallons of water across the launcher at launch, and it cools down the launcher, and it also suppresses the sound waves, because the shock that comes off of that rocket when the boosters ignite and the engines ignite is very, very loud, and it could tear apart the rocket in the surrounding area. So we suppress that sound with water, and that was a test we were doing. You can see just how much water comes out the top. So that was a pretty incredible test to see it like that without a rocket on top. And then the bottom picture on the right is one of our hydrogen spheres that is full of liquid hydrogen. And we have another one on the other side of the pad that's filled with liquid oxygen. And we pipe that from the sides of the pad all the way up the pad to the launcher, into the umbilicals, into the rocket to fill the rocket on launch day with liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. And then there's also lightning protection towers. So this is important. We live in Florida, and there's a lot of thunderstorms here, and especially in the summer. There are 3 towers around the launch pad that have a catenary lightning system. So if lightning strikes anywhere near, it's supposed to strike the lightning towers versus our rocket. And we've proven that it really does work. We have cameras on the launch pad that watch, especially when there's thunderstorms. And we have caught lightning strikes on camera that are striking the towers, not our rocket. So really important. If lightning were to strike our rocket, it could ruin a lot of our wiring, our avionics. I mean, it would not be good for us. We'd have to redo a lot of things. So those lightning towers really protect us during our thunderstorms that we get here in Florida. So the Orion spacecraft and processing. So this is a really cool picture. I'm sure you've probably seen it up in the right corner. That's the Orion with the moon in the background. That is an actual picture from our mission last year when we were heading to the moon. And that is the capsule that the astronauts will ride in at the end of next year. There'll be 4 astronauts that ride in that capsule to the moon. It is processed in a facility with you can see all the infrastructure around it. So again, platforms, so we can get up close to it, so we can work on its heat shield. We can load its hypergolic fuel so that it can move in space. Hypergolic fuel is what we need to maneuver our engines in space, our thrusters. But it's also very toxic, so we have to be very careful. Again, we do it in hazmat suits, but that's how we process that Orion capsule is in this facility. We bring it in and we put it in we tuck it in and we wrap the platforms around it, and we can work on it and get into the crew module and get places we need to go. And then finally, my favorite place. This is where I work. This is Launch Control Center. It is a building that manages the launches from Complex 39, and we launch off of 39B. That's our launch pad. There are 4 firing rooms is what we call them. And the test team and engineers work in the firing rooms to test our flight hardware throughout the weeks and months ahead of launch. And then that's where we launch our vehicles. So I spend a lot of time in this room. I was just in this room this morning. It's where my office is. I work in this building day in and day out. And our engineers work in this building, and we actually command and control our vehicle from the Launch Control Center. So that's where I sit day in and day out. And our launch director sits up here on the top row. She's up here at the top, and all of the engineers in the test team sit below her. So, real quick, we had some issues last year. So we also had hurricanes. Hurricanes delayed us last year. That's my safety team. We rode out the storm. You can see the two storms coming in, Ian and Nicole. We stayed in the Launch Control Center when the hurricanes hit, and we were there to make as after the all clear was given, we were there to make sure that we didn't have very much damage, and what damage we did have, we documented so we could get right back to launching that vehicle. In fact, after Nicole hit, we launched like 4 days later. So that was a pretty amazing effort by the team. But we even have people that stay during hurricanes, and I'm one of them. So that's kind of a candid shot of the team getting ready to stay for a couple days while the hurricanes hit. They do give us time to prepare our houses and get our families safe first, of course. And finally, launch night. This is pretty cool. There's some more candid shots. This is me and my team. This is sorry. On the left-hand side, this is a screenshot from NASA TV. That is the back of my head. So that's pretty cool. That's where I sit day in and day out. That is the safety console. We get all the information from our displays, our engineers, making sure that we are doing everything safe for our mission, but primarily for our crew, our team of people that are working. That's my job, is to make sure people don't get hurt every day when they come and work around all this hazardous materials, hazardous working areas. We make sure that we're keeping our people safe. And then we launched on November 16th at 1:47 in the morning. It was a very long day, but it was very exciting. And that's a picture of myself and my coworker. We are the two that were certified to launch this rocket for safety. And that is our launch director, Charlie Blackwell Thompson. And she was cutting our ties. That's a launch tradition. Your first launch of a new rocket, or your first launch of that rocket, you get your tie cut. So she had her scissors, and she was very proud of our team, and she cut our tie. And it's very cool to have a woman as our launch director. She's the first woman launch director, and she's incredible to work for. So just some other candid shots of myself and my coworker in the firing room. So it was really cool. It was just really, really exciting to be there and make history. Basically, we made history that night, and we know that. So pretty proud. And then we went around the moon. We traveled 1.3 million miles for 25 days, and we splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. And so the Navy helps us recover the capsule. And when the crew is on, the Navy will help us recover our crew and bring the capsule back to Florida, and we get to start over again for the next mission. We'll make the capsule, we'll fix whatever's wrong with it, and we'll get it ready to go again. So going back to the moon is going to be a shining moment for our generation. And I really hope that you guys are ready and that you're going to be part of our Artemis generation, because we need the talent, and we need I need the women. You need to help me out, because oftentimes I'm the only woman in the room. So I'm excited to have more women come and join me. And you guys are the Artemis generation. So are you ready? Because I am ready for this. And that is what I had. So Humanity's Return to the Moon is my program that I'm working on here at Kennedy Space Center. And if anybody has questions or things I didn't cover that you wanted to know about, because I really wasn't sure, I just threw it out there, what I do every day, and threw in some cool pictures. So I'm
Lisa, there's another question. Aaron is wanting to know, why do we always land in the water?
Okay, that's a really good question. So we didn't land in the water with the Space Shuttle, right? We landed like an airplane on a runway. But we landed in the water with the capsules for Apollo, and we were doing so for Orion because the capsule is a better design for us to get around the moon. We cannot get around the moon and back with like a aircraft type vehicle, simply put. And so we can't land on a runway anymore. And the water cushions our landing. Basically, we have parachutes, and then you kind of land softly in the water, so it cushions that landing. It has to do with the heat shield on the bottom. It is really hot when you re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, and that heat shield has what's called an ablative on it, and it's one of the best materials to keep the heat away from our astronauts when they're inside the capsule. But because of that, we can't land with wheels anymore like an aircraft. And that was one of the flaws with shuttle, was those tiles. If everybody remembers we had an accident. It was Space Shuttle Columbia, and part of it was attributed to our tiles. They're very fragile, and there was a flaw with the foam falling off our tank. So for all sorts of safety reasons, especially, we went back to the capsule design, but especially because it's a long duration mission out to the moon and then to Mars, and then the heat shield needing to be that's that ablative material versus the tile material. So now Russia lands on the tundra, like the land. That seems like it would be a hard landing. So we have decided to land in the water.
Awesome, thank you. So what can the girls do to help follow in your footsteps? Are there different types of classes they need to take?
Well, yeah. So, like I said, I graduated quite a bit ago. My 30th high school reunion is coming up. And STEM wasn't even a thing, but I just really enjoyed math and science. So I took every math and science class I could. And then I decided that I needed to go to college at a place that would help me move to the aerospace sector, which at the time, Embry-Riddle was one of the only places that had that. Now, nowadays, there's lots of schools that have really good engineering programs, aerospace engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, all of those NASA looks for when they're hiring. So any engineering type degree, Embry-Riddle now has a space degree, which is really cool. Because it's becoming such an industry. I mentioned SpaceX and Blue Origin. There are all sorts of companies that you can work for, not just NASA anymore, not just the government, with different missions and different rockets that they're launching. SpaceX launches almost every week here, a Falcon 9 with satellites. So there's just a lot happening in the aerospace industry. And so engineering degrees are really, really important. So the AP classes in high school and in the engineering or in the sciences and math, and then going forward into college, and then looking for internships. NASA always has internships, and that's a really good way to get in with NASA too. So when you're in college, and then there's also a lot of contractors too. So there's just all sorts of options to get into the industry.
Awesome, thank you. So when we go back to the moon, how long is the plan for them to be there? And what types of missions will they do?
So we're still getting our lander. So I mentioned SpaceX. SpaceX has been contracted to develop our lunar lander, and we will use their lander to land on the moon, and then we will start making home there, basically, and make sure that we know the challenges that we might face before we're a little closer to home, 3 days from Earth versus years when we get to Mars. So we'll be doing experiments. We're looking for water. We're going to the South Pole of the moon for that reason, because we think there's water or frozen, ice. At one point there might have been water there. So we're going to go look, because to be able to find water and melt the ice to make water is great. Then we don't have to make it ourselves from hydrogen and oxygen, and just really learn how to live somewhere without an atmosphere, not on our Earth is our first goal. And then they're going to have something called the Space Gateway, which will be in lunar orbit. And that will be our hopping off point to Mars. And I didn't really mention that because that's still in work, but it's kind of like a space station, but in lunar orbit instead. So, we have the International Space Station that's been up orbiting the Earth now for 20 plus years, I think. And so it's kind of like that, but way out around the moon. So again, seeing how humans react to zero gravity for a long period of time, or reduced gravity, because the moon is like 1/6 gravity of Earth. How does that affect the body, the human body, your muscles, when you don't have gravity's effects like we do here on Earth, all those kind of things, and just really prepare ourselves to make that jump out to Mars next.
Awesome. And how long are they looking to stay on the moon for?
I don't really know the length of the duration of the missions. Is it going to be a week, a month? I don't know. I don't know if that's been determined yet.
Okay. And then someone else had asked, do you have any books you'd recommend for young readers interested in space?
Young readers. Well, I'd have to ask my husband, who's a teacher. I read. Whenever he's probably not listening to me, he's in the other room. I could get you a list though. Like what age group? All age
The
groups?
one's asking
Elementary?
is elementary, yes.
Yeah, let me, because he's an elementary school teacher. So I can get you a list of things that they have in their library here.
Awesome.
My kids are older now. I have one that's going off to college this year and one who's a freshman in high school. So I have lost track about the elementary school books. But luckily I have a husband. My husband's a teacher. So
yeah, absolutely. I
so
appreciate it.
I can get you a list.
Okay. Do we have
Yeah.
any other questions? You guys can just unmute yourself too, if you would like.
I think I have another cool picture. What's this? I have one more. Whatever. Oh yeah, that's a cool picture. I had to put that one in there too.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah, so that's our lights lighting up the rocket on the pad. And when we got out there one night, we have all sorts of cool pictures.
Okay, go ahead. Why do they how come it doesn't sink? And how do they steer it? And why is it called a capsule?
So why doesn't it sink on the launch pad?
Yeah.
No, when it lands, right? When it lands in the water.
Yeah.
Oh, when it lands in the water. Okay, well, so remember, let me get back to see these. Ooh. These help it right. These help it right itself upward and help it stay buoyant. That's a really good question.
Pretty
we
cool,
don't want
right?
it to sink. Yeah, we don't want it to sink until we get, well, ever, but especially when we have astronauts in there, right? So, yeah, and then there's inflatables down here too that kind of poof, they pop out. But yeah, so this keeps it upright so it's not tipping over, and then helps it stay so it doesn't sink. And I don't know the why it's called a capsule. It's always been called, probably because its shape. I'm just guessing. It's been called a capsule since Apollo, long, long ago. It's small. It's not very luxurious and it's not very big, but I think if I was going to the moon, I think I would do it for, I think I could do it. It's not very big. So, and I think you had another question. I didn't remember. Why didn't sink?
Why is it called a capsule?
What's steering?
How do they steer it?
Oh, how they steer it. Okay, so there are thruster, little rockets, little engines all around it. Some of these holes, and they fire in space, and that's how it maneuvers. Because remember, up in space, there's no gravity. So when you fire your thruster one way, you're going to go that way pretty fast without anything to stop you. So you fire different thrusters, and there's thrusters all around every side, so they can steer and they can tell the rocket or the capsule how much thrust to put this way or that way so it steers properly. And that's that really dangerous fuel I was talking about. When we load our capsule, we have to wear hazmat suits because you can't breathe it. It'll hurt people. So we have, and that's kind of my job in safety, is to make sure we're doing the right thing, that we keep our people safe. But that's the fuel we have to use in space because there's no atmosphere up there. So we cannot use like a car engine wouldn't work in space. We have to use a different kind of fuel. It's called hypergolic. When you mix it together, it immediately ignites and reacts. Versus here on like a car engine, you have, it's a different, because you have atmosphere. So, yeah. So there's all sorts of like little baby engines on it that fire, and
My
the astronauts can tell you which way they want to go.
My last question is, like, why do they does one of them stay on the moon and then another comes back to the Earth?
So back in Apollo, one stayed and orbited the moon while two went down. But for our missions, they're all going to go down to the moon, and then they'll all come back together. For now, eventually, I bet you that we will stay on the moon full time. But we're barely starting that right now. So for now, we all come back together. But I think eventually we will be staying up there, when some will come home and some will stay and they'll trade out after a few months. And
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We had somebody else ask, where would they sleep on the capsule?
Well, Sleeping is interesting because you don't have gravity, so you don't really need a bed. They sleep in like bags, Velcro to the wall. I'm really not kidding. So because you don't have gravity, so there's no up or down. So they just get in these little sleeping bags, so they're kind of contained and not floating around. And they have there's Velcro everywhere, and they just Velcro themselves, or they can strap themselves into their seat. But you don't really need to lay flat because there's no gravity. So it's kind of makes it easier in a small enclosed space.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Somebody else had asked, what has been your favorite memory while working at NASA?
Oh, my favorite. Oh gosh, that's a really hard one. I have a whole bunch. I mean, I have memories from shuttle that are just incredible. But right now, my favorite memory is launch of Artemis I, because I just know how important this is for humanity and how important it is for our nation. And to be in that firing room and be one of just a handful of people that got to launch that Artemis I vehicle for the very first time, I will never forget that night. And so that was pretty incredible. And I know like Artemis II is going to be really cool because we have humans on board on the capsule, and that's going to be neat too. So that'll probably be my next favorite memory. But just being able to be there that night and be one of there's maybe 75 of us in that room, and that's it. That was it. That was the launch team. And it's just, all of us are very, very proud of that. So I'd say that right now, that's my favorite memory. There's been a few really, really incredible times though. Landing, seeing that shuttle land is really neat too. And anyway, being on the launch pad after the fuel is loaded and they're putting the astronauts in the shuttle, that was pretty cool because very few people get to do that too. And that's really dangerous and scary, but also just incredible because you're very few people get to do that too. So
very cool. Do you have any other questions?
Put it back on this page. There's my favorite. There's my memory right there. Yay.
Somebody else had asked, are you excited that Artemis will be all female?
So I am excited that we're going to have female astronauts going back to the moon for the first time, right? Because in the Apollo era, it was all men. And that is very cool. And also we're going to have, diversity. We have, men and women of color and of different nationalities. And I just think it's pretty awesome to have a true, just our humanity. That's who we are, right? It's neat to have the diversity going to the moon this time. And I'm, well, as you can see, look at the diversity in my pictures here, it's cool. And I'm proud of it. And I'm proud of our agency, our NASA agency for making this happen for us, and especially for us women, right? It's cool. So like I said, Charlie Blackwell Thompson in that middle picture, she's an incredible leader, an incredible launch director, and really proud to work for her. So.
Awesome. And what is the tradition of cutting ties? Like, where did that come from?
Well, I don't know. It started, I think, way back in Apollo. And the launch director, if it's your first launch of like I said, so for us, because many of us have launched space shuttles, but that was this is the first launch of Artemis. So she came around and cut everybody's tie, and I still have it. So you can see her ties cut. And our ties are green because green for go, if that makes any sense. We have some little quirks, right? Because if you think about a stoplight, red is stop and green is go. So go for launch. So in fact, I was wearing a dress, but I put a tie on anyway to have it cut. And so it's just a cool tradition. So I won't have my tie cut again because I will have launched this rocket. But the gentleman with me, he is retiring. So who I trained to take his place, they'll get their tie cut next time. So it's just like a quirky tradition. We have a few. Corn, beans, and bread is another. Cornbread and beans is another thing we eat after launch. Green, you can see she paints her. Well, Charlie paints her nails green. There's a lot of little fun things that we do to launch. So little traditions that have been traditions that we've done for years. And so, that's awesome. I have a green bracelet on. That I will wear next time. Anyway, it's fun. Got to have some fun too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Was there any other questions? All righty. Well, we appreciate you hopping on here with us, Lisa.
Yeah. If
Thanks
anybody
so
thinks
much.
of a question afterwards, you know where to find me. So
Absolutely.
and I will get a book list to you for elementary school. And if
Awesome.
anybody, has anything else you think of, like I said, this presentation was very much tailored to me and what I've done. But if you have any questions about the program, or you think of something down the road, or you just need a contact someday, and I have no plans on leaving, so I will be here to launch rockets to the moon. So down the road, if you need a contact, you know where to find me.
We appreciate it. We appreciate all the goodies that you send. I know.
Oh, you're welcome. If you need, I can get more too. So
I
know that went home with all the campers, and they were super excited about the book, everything.
We love to give out goodies. It's because we want to share what we do, and we want to make especially the young people excited too about our future program, and maybe want to work with us someday. So
all right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks, girls, for joining us. And we will be in touch. Thank you.
All righty. Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.